Hey everybody, welcome back. So here I'm working on a raw piece of masonite panel. It's about 24 inches square. And again, it's naked, there's nothing on it. I'm using a piece of tailor's chalk, and with the reference photo on my phone there in my hand, I'm making a contour drawing from that reference photo of a mama bear. Now, I'm not being super precise or careful. I want this to be an interesting drawing that feels like the bear, but is a bit more expressive than a precise drawing would be. You'll also notice that I am embellishing the drawing with additional line work. It's just line work, patterns, things that I see or feel as I'm working on this, not necessarily inherent to the shape of the bear or any other ideas at this point. Just really enjoying making lines for line's sake. I also mixed my tools up there a little bit. I think I added an Inktense block along with a pencil. And now you can see that I'm putting some different acrylic mediums over top of the line work. I used a brayer to spread them around, and now I'm using a larger brush, and I am further manipulating the lines while the medium over top of them is wet. And now I've opened my palette box, and I have a pretty big brush, about a 1-inch wide brush in my hand, and I'm just going to begin to start blocking in some of the shapes as I see them. I'm thinking about value, not necessarily trying to match the color mixed or the color that I'm laying down to the actual color that I see in the reference. Mostly I want to use up this paint because my palette is almost dry and I hate the idea of wasting paint. So I'm really just putting colors down that maybe feel right or feel correct as far as value goes, and getting some marks down on this piece. Cover the surface with an initial layer of marks. Usually I do this stage with a larger brush. I'm not really sure why I reached for such a small one, because I'm typically, I want this to be over with in just a matter of minutes so that I can move on. But for whatever reason, that was the brush that I reached for. The nice thing about doing this particular stage with a broken in or almost dry palette is that my colors are all really gray and neutralized from all of the mixing and things that have been happening on that surface. So it already gives me a really nice low saturation level, neutral range of colors that I can start my underpainting with. And also at this point, I'm not as concerned with covering every detail or every piece of the panel at this pass, because I work in layers from general to specific. I know I'm going to have lots of opportunity to go in and make smaller marks. Right now, I really just want to get the nature of the animal in, get some gesture to her body weight or her expression started, and begin to have a conversation with the personality that's emerging. Now I have gone back to the reference photo, and you can see me looking at the reference photo and then going back and drawing the surface. These lines are based on, these lines that I'm drawing right now are based on a more tightly rendered, detailed, specific look at the bear. Again, not completely going for something that is photo representational, but reading that reference photo and responding to it with regards to patterns of shadows and lighter areas or highlights, and also responding to some of the marks that are already on the surface. There may be some really swooshy brushwork or other sorts of shapes that I've tuned in on. I really like this sort of circular feel. It's like she has a crown or a halo around her. I'm really, really digging that. And as I'm drawing this and adding other circles into different spaces, or that circular gesture into other areas, I'm thinking in my head about circular things that might be interesting to introduce, add, or allude to in the painting. I'm also making some orange marks here with a orange Inktense block. And the pencil that I used earlier was a really nice dark graphite. So when I hit it again with these mediums, which you can see me doing off to the side, the lines are really going to come forward. They're going to be really nice and dark. And they're going to sort of float over top of what's already there. Now I'm just going back to my palette box and I'm going to make a couple little corrections. I noticed that I had that nose drawn entirely wrong. It wasn't even reading correctly. So I did want to fix that, because for me, I want the animal to be looking at me and speaking to me. And if I have an anatomical issue that is disturbing to see, it's harder for me to engage with the painting that's on the easel. So I'm popping some lighter lights in. I really want to get my value pattern established from the get-go. That's something that I often struggle with, because I do see color so strongly, and color sits in the middle. So I want to have those lighter values in right now at this point. And I also want to start to build some really luscious darks down into that area, dribbling under her chin and down her front legs. There's just some really wonderful line work happening there with some darker glazed paint. And I'm going to work that. I am using the line work, or the shapes that I've drawn, the contour lines. I'm using them as areas to fill or start color, different color bleeds, but I'm also painting over them in some instances. And the nature of the marks that I'm making, many of them are transparent, and so those lines will actually show through the paint marks when they're dried. And it creates a really wonderful history to the surface that I particularly appreciate. Still thinking about that halo and how I can use that circular shape as a key compositional piece in the painting. This session here took roughly 30 to 35 minutes. Again, I'm not making any sort of painstaking decisions, just getting started on blocking in the shape of the bear, deciding some basic compositional things, and getting my values down. So this is where she ended up at the end of this session. You can see there's an interesting beginning to the line work. I have a really fabulous red and green palette, or a palette of complementary colors. And I find that pretty exciting. I'm going to play off of that some more. And that circular form is still there. So something else for me to work off of.